We had a lot in common. And it had crossed my mind over the years that it would be interesting to meet someone with a disability, but it's not enough to build a relationship on. So it wasn't until I met Dan, who's also a poet and has a very similar way of living in the world, very much a thinker and a conversationalist. We lived 100 miles apart for much of our relationship, so a lot of it was on the phone, and a lot of it was just that we loved talking to each other. But there's definitely the fact that even though our disabilities are so different, that there was just something that didn't have to be explained, that we both knew what it was like growing up, dealing with difference and navigating in the world as someone with certain limitations.
Oh, it has to have been a real ability to understand each other is huge in a relationship. Now, you're both poets.
Yes.
Is there a poem that is like one of your absolute favorites that really just makes you so happy that that's what you are, a poet? Is there a poem you could actually say to the listening audience right now or no?
Mine?
Yeah. Is there one
sure.
Yeah, I think that would be wonderful.
Oh, that's lovely of you to ask. I'll pull out my book because
I'm sure you have it marked.
Not as good at remembering my poems as I was when I was younger.
That's okay.
I could read you a poem about my son or a poem about my husband.
I think a poem about your son would be especially meaningful for many people.
Okay, let's see.
Got it.
Here it is.
That's the one. I can see it.
At 15 months.
Okay.
My son works his way from the far end of the kitchen. New to walking, his halting steps, mostly on tiptoe, resemble my own palsied gait. Soon I know he'll steady himself, easily outrace me. But just now, his face flushed with effort seems backlit. Mama, he chimes, tilting precariously toward me. Crouched against the wall, I brace myself for his weight, and I admit, savor it. This flicker of time when he's a little less perfect, a little more mine.
Wow, that was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for doing that for me.
Oh, sure.
That's wonderful. Now, does your son ever go back to these pieces of poetry? I mean, those are so, I think they're very personal for you. Does he ever look at them and say anything to you other than the more recent realization from your article that you really were different? He probably thought it was just normal. Because like your disability, this was his mother, so you were what you were.
Right.
But does he ever go back and look at the poetry part? Is he part poet, or is he? Which way did he go?
Well, he'd like to be a lawyer. He's gonna take the LSAT soon and see where that goes. But he's actually taking his first creative writing class while he's in Italy.
Wow.
He's writing fiction, and he's good. He sends me his pieces to just, edit the grammar, and they really grab me. But no, he doesn't really read poetry. We read a lot together when he was small. I kept that going as long as I possibly could because it was so delicious. But,
that is so great.
Maybe he'll come back to the poems at some point.
In your memoirs, what was the most important part, or the most important chapter, if you had one, that was really special to you, that you would really want to recommend people sitting and maybe reading twice, or reading slowly, or reading out loud? Because reading out loud sometimes really does bring home, especially because a memoir is not like a regular book. It's different. It's definitely a personal experience of someone else.
It's very personal, yeah. And I love that idea of reading aloud. I think because I come from poetry, the sound of words is so important to me when I write.
So what would you want to make sure people that had the book would read out loud? What chapter?
Well, the thing that comes to my mind first is it was a very painful chapter to write because it was a very painful experience. When I was in the hospital, I think it was our second, was it our first night together? I think it was our second night together because his father, my first husband, spent the first night with us. Mm-hmm. And then he went home. We had a dog to take care of. So I was alone with my son. And the only way that I could breastfeed him was if they put pillows around me, and I needed the nurses to help me prop him up, and it was a whole process. And that's really where I was starting to see, like, oh my God, how am I going to do this when I'm alone? And there was a night nurse, who didn't get the memo and just refused to help me. She said, "Oh, it says on his chart he's already eaten, and that's that." And he was crying, and I wanted to feed him, and I physically couldn't do it. It was so awful. And writing about how painful that was really cathartic. And I think in some ways it was the most important piece of writing I did on the subject, because it I don't know. I remember writing it and having to get up from my chair a lot and thinking, well, just keep going, because if it hurts this much, it must be important.
Now, looking back on all the and you know, and I hear you saying hurting and painful and stuff, but it's made you who you are, and it's definitely probably something you wouldn't change 1 minute of, because you do learn from experiences like that. Almost put things in reality from another person's perspective. You know, like we always have to say, you know, what I would like, blah, 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 but other people don't see things the way we do. And obviously that nurse didn't get the memo. Right. So she wasn't ready to be there for you. But now looking back, what do you think? What do you think of your life? Would you change anything? Like, would you have been pushier? Would you have been more verbal, maybe more of a journalist and not a poet? You know, put down the facts, you know, try to change the way people see everything in a different way. Or would you have stayed with the poetry? Because there's very different writing styles.
Right. I think I don't think I would change things. I wish I could change the timeline. I wish I wasn't such a late bloomer. Could have learned.
No, I think we're all late bloomers. I think the late bloomers that's it. It is all about late blooming. But what were the benefits? How's that? What were the benefits of your life the way it was?
Oh, well, I think having a disability, you're automatically an empathetic person. You know, you just know that people struggle. You recognize that at a very young age. So I think that's a real gift, and I think that's a gift for a writer, because you can enter other people's experiences more easily.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about when you wrote the book? Was it always about the cerebral palsy, or were there other things that you really wanted to share? Were there other parts in the memoir that had nothing to do with your disability, but they just fit right into who you were?
Well, there's aspects of raising a child with someone who wasn't as helpful as he could have been, you know.
Okay.
The difficulties of marriage, and when you introduce a child into a marriage, the things that you have to face, not only about yourself, but about each other.
It is difficult sometimes for people, like they think they can accept, right? They think they understand everything, and then child is, it's a 24/7, yeah.
Yeah, it changes the dynamic, and in my case, I think it made me see more clearly what I did and didn't have in the relationship. So I think all of that it's a short book. It's kind of, I would say, novella length, but I think it touches on relationships, on that relationship as much as it touches on disability.
Now, if you had to say what was your proudest moment? You've been living these years with a disability, and you don't have to brag. I mean, we're not looking for anything like that, but what would you say? Because I think a lot of people with disabilities, no matter what they are, there is a moment in their life when they say, you know what, that really speaks to people with disabilities, it speaks to who I am, something like that. What was your proud, and of course there probably are more than one, but what was your proudest moment?
I have two things in my head.
You have two things,
so
okay.
I'll tell you both of them quickly.
Okay.
One was during Hurricane Sandy. I was living in Hoboken, and we got hit pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
Luckily, I was on a top floor, and so we didn't face a lot of damage, but we were kind of trapped up there, and we didn't have lights. And so my son and I would sit in the evenings, and he'd play me acoustic guitar by candlelight, and I just look at these capable hands of his doing something that I had always wanted to do and couldn't do well, and thinking, I made this person.
So he's one of your proudest accomplishments?
He definitely is.
That's
he
wonderful.
Definitely is.
And what's the other one?
Another one was I was at, I think it was AWP, which is a conference for writers, and I was on a panel that was specifically writers with cerebral palsy, very specific. And there was a young woman in the audience who had a mild physical disability, and I saw her crying when I was reading my poems.
Wow.
And I thought, it's really good she's hearing this, and I'm really happy to have been the one to express this for her.
What would be your takeaway message for the listening audience? I mean, you've already read a poem, which is like, thank you so much for that. What would be a takeaway message for everybody that's listening today?
Oh, I think the lesson I keep learning over and over again is really to do what you love and follow that path. You know, we don't know how much life we have, and I spent a lot of time not writing, and I'm so happy that I've finally figured out how to make it a priority in my life. And I think whatever that thing is that makes you feel, like this is what I'm here to do it.
We want to thank our guest, Ona Gritz, and we want to remind you about the memoir, she's calling it a novella, regarding her parenting experiences and the disability or the ability. And we want to thank all of you for listening to Your Family's Health.
This brings an end to another edition of Your Family's Health on 90.3 FM, the voice of Nassau Community College. Joan Buckley is professor of nursing at Nassau Community College. Your comments are always welcome at whpc@ncc.edu. This program was produced at the studios of WHPC 90.3 on the campus of Nassau Community College. Join us again next week for another edition of Your Family's Health.